So at this point, we're going to have a roll call, please.
Mr. Byrne? Here. Mrs. Horner?
Here.
Mrs. Gray?
Here.
Mr. Salmon? Here. Mrs. Blake?
Here.
Mrs. Richmond?
Here.
Mrs. Thorne?
Here.
Mrs. Wolters?
Here.
Mark Barron? Here. Sykes? Here. Mrs. McKeon?
Here.
Madam President?
Thank you. Okay, so at this point, we're calling to order the regular session of the Board of Education. I just want to draw your attention to the statement of public notice in your agenda. It talks about how there are normally 2 times in the Board of Education meeting for public comment. Tonight, we're actually going to do it a little bit differently. We're going to have 3 times. So there's going to be a public comment after the security presentation where people can come up and have any questions or comments about the security issue. And then we're going to have move on with our regular meeting after that. And there's a public comment on agenda items where you can speak on anything else on the agenda. And then towards the end of the meeting, there is a public comment on non-agenda items where you can speak about anything you want to speak about. If you do come forward, I just ask that you try to limit your comments to 5 minutes because we have a lot of people tonight and a lot of stuff to cover. And also sign in and put your name and address on the clipboard and tell us your name and address when you come up to the microphone so we know who's talking to us. Thank you. So we're going to have the presentation. The board is going to go down below to hear it. But before that, I just wanted to share one nice little piece of news. I was sent a copy of a letter that went to Mr. Markarian the other day. This is from the Somerset County Association of School Administrators. I'll just read the letter to you. It's pretty short. It says, "Dear Nick, please accept my sincere congratulations on being selected Somerset County Superintendent of the Year for 2018 to 19. The award recognizes that you have distinguished yourself as a leader in the field of education and as our Somerset County Association and leader. You work collaboratively to build partnerships within your district and your county. You are a consummate professional who is respected by your colleagues. Again, congratulations on your selection, and I wish you continued success in your professional endeavors. I look forward to attending your board meeting to celebrate you more formally. Sincerely, Nancy Gartenberg, who's the superintendent of schools in Montgomery." So. Other people realize how amazing this work is, it's not just us. And we want to congratulate you. And I guess she's going to come to a future meeting, but she hasn't told us when yet, to officially present her award. So at this time, the board is going to go down below, and we're going to hear a presentation from Kathy Devlin from DevTech, who is the consultant that we asked to come and take a look at our security in our district.
So everyone, thank you for being here tonight. This is Kathy Devlin. Kathy was contracted by the district to take a look at some security measures around the district. As our board president, Ms. McKeon just explained. Just quickly by way of introduction, I wanted to let you know a little bit about Kathy. Kathy was a captain in the New Jersey State Police from 1980 to 2007. She was the security chief of the Pemberton School District after that, from 2007 to 2016. And most recently, she was a member of the New Jersey State School Task Force for the 2015 report. So those are some of the highlights that Kathy brings to us, and I really appreciated the time that she spent in district. I thank her for being here this evening, and I look forward to what she has to share with us tonight.
Thank you.
So thanks, Kathy.
Thanks. You really could have left the dates out. That gives away how old I am. That was really not necessary. Good afternoon. Lovely township you have here. It's very quaint. I like it. So as far as the security goes, I will start this by saying that you are very well positioned here, much better than many of the districts that I work with. You have a lot of things in place that others do not, and they are working on other things that should be in place. Let me caution you that I cannot get into specifics. One of the first tenets of good security is that you don't share all of that with other people, so that it doesn't get to the wrong hands either on purpose or unintentionally. So if you're going to ask me specific questions, don't be upset with me if I tell you I really can't answer that. Some things have to be close to the vets. It's not that they're trying not to be transparent, it's just that that's good security practice, okay? So I'm just going to go through some general subjects for you. The first thing that I will talk about is what's called access control. Who's getting into your buildings? How are they getting into the buildings? So you have what are called man traps, double lobbies in most of your buildings except this one. There is a procedure about that. They are looking into some more devices to further lock down the building so that only authorized people can get in through some sort of an electronic device. And that shuts down some of the others. You will always be able to get out of the building in accordance with fire code, which means you don't have to have any special knowledge. You just turn the handle and go. That will not change with the addition of access control. And then training so that that is the same district-wide, that all of the people that are staffing those front doors do the same thing no matter whether you go to Oak Street or whether you come here, so that the parents and the visitors all are seeing the same procedure. Security cameras are in place here. They need to be all converted to digital. The analogs really aren't being supported anymore and don't work very well. So you need to switch over to digital. Probably needs to be a couple extra put around the school in areas that I had mentioned to them. Again, I can't tell you those specific things. And the acceptable use. Because there are cameras in the district doesn't mean that you all get to see what's on them, right? That's another security measure. That has to be dictated by statute mostly, but also confidentiality rules. So again, don't be upset if you say, I want to see the footage from blah, 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 and they say, no, I'm sorry, you can't see that, because there may be other people in that footage, and they have a right to their confidentiality. So that's just part of the procedure. Your parking and traffic, I know, is they're doing the best they can with the area that they have. It's difficult here for to get all of the flow the right way and to have adequate parking for both staff and all the visitors and things that come. There's not much you can do about that. You just don't have the space for that. But I think that they're doing the best they can to monitor that and make sure that it is well supervised for both safety and security reasons. Best practices in communications is to have the teachers have the ability to make a 911 call, make a public address call from their classrooms. That is being worked on. The IT director here is working on both the camera angle, the access control, and the communication piece in cooperation with the business administrator. And those things are in the works. He is very sharp. He is up to date on all of the things that he needs to be up to date on. I think he's a professor as well. So you are fortunate to have him to help you move on to the next phase of your what's called target hardening measures. Okay. The security climate here is good. I was impressed with all of the principals. They all have a very detailed plan about what they will do in emergencies, specific to their building. I gave them some additional suggestions to tweak that a little bit. They are all concerned with security. They are security conscious. And I think in general, your buildings here are very safe. I don't think you have too much to worry about. Policy and recommendations gave to the board just some little tweaks and changes there. Again, you are well positioned with your policies and your procedures. Just a few little things that need to be changed, in my opinion, to enhance what you already have here. Door hardware, those kinds of things. Keep in mind all of these things that I'm telling you about target hardening are very expensive. So you have to have long-range plans and do this a little bit at a time. Most schools, don't have the budget to put that kind of stuff in all at once. So you have to do it a little bit at a time. So let me say this. I know what is the hot topic of discussion is putting armed staff in all of your schools. So when I was a station commander, I put a school resource officer into our high school, our local high school. When I went to the security chief, as the security chief of a school district, we had some in place there, and eventually we removed them for many reasons. After I went to the school resource officer training, I did all of that sort of stuff on my own. I don't think that it's the panacea that people believe it to be. I think it gives you a false sense of security. The issues that we have just seen in the paper all had police officers there. And I was saying over the weekend that this was just a thought that I had. Maybe they're targeting those schools on purpose because there are school resource officers there. They are disturbed individuals. It may be that this is a thrill. I get more infamy. There is a very strong correlation between suicide and active shooter homicides. So most of them don't have the wherewithal to commit suicide, so they do what's called suicide by cop. So maybe that is why they're going to those places. I don't think that it is a necessary thing here at this time. You have a very low crime rate in this township, and like I said, your schools are very safe as they are and are getting better little by little with just small things that you need to do here. Your children are probably safer in this school than they are anywhere else. I would not have a problem sending my own children to any of your schools here, and I don't say that about all the schools I go to. So I think that you are safe here, right? Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I'm just gonna
You want her to come up, or just young lady
hang
right
on
here?
a sec.
So just so everyone knows how we're going to proceed, the board's going to ask questions, and then we're going to go back up so that we can listen to all the public's questions so we can hear them. It's hard with our backs turned, and we'll try to talk in the mic loud enough that you can hear our questions. So just so everyone knows, we did meet in executive session a little while ago where we were able to ask some questions that we can't ask in public because of the reasons that Kathy explained about how you don't want to talk about specific details. So we did ask some questions, and I think the board has some other questions that they may want to ask now that we do want the public to hear. Does anyone want to start, or do you want me to start? You want me to start? Okay. So one of the things the board is very interested in is you just mentioned about how a lot of these hardening things that we could do to our facilities are very expensive. So if you could just let us know, like priority-wise, you mentioned a lot of different ones, cameras, door hardware, other communications. What you think the top couple of priorities are?
I think access control would be my first order of business. When I hear about those shootings, one of them was a former student. How did they get in there? So you want to concentrate on keeping them off the property and out of the building. Security works from the outside in, from the perimeter to the front walls and then into the inside rooms. So as best you can, you want to keep people that would do you harm on the outside. So I would say to do your access control first. The cameras, it depends on what you want to do, what you're doing that for. A lot of schools do that for disciplinary purposes, to review after the fact. So that might not be as important if what you want to put them outside to see someone approaching the building. So you can do those cameras first and do the interior ones later. And then I have never had any kind of an incident that after we debriefed, the number one complaint wasn't communication. That nobody got to hear this and who got to hear what when. It's very important in emergency to get that direction out quickly as to what is happening so that the staff can take whatever appropriate measures as quickly as possible because time is of the essence.
And my second question has to do with something that was in the report about research evidence about school culture and climate and how that's related to school security.
Yeah, school climate has shown in research that that is the most important thing for reducing violence, bullying, physical aggression. There is no research on school resource officers and their efficacy in keeping schools more safe. There's a couple case studies out there, but they are inconclusive. The only thing that they can draw from the case studies is that there is a school to criminal justice pipeline. They call it school to prison pipeline when police officers are stationed inside the schools. Things that the district would normally handle in-house now get handled by the police department, and the children are funneled into the criminal justice system. But there is no evidence that it makes you safer to have a police officer there. And let me tell you from experience, the bad guys can shoot whoever they want. They're just going to randomly shoot. The police officers do not have that luxury. You may never be able to get a shot off in here depending on where you are, what the building is like, what the hallway is like, how many kids are running around. They're looking now at that Santa Fe to see if some of those children were not killed by police gunfire. So that would be my last thing that I would do here if I was going to do it. I wouldn't do it. That's just my personal opinion. I'm sure there are other people who have different opinion, and I respect your opinion. But I just don't think that it's a necessary thing here.
Okay, thank you. I have one more question for now. You talked in the report a little bit about all the good things that our police department is currently doing that you think are good things. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, you have an excellent police department here. They are well-trained. They are forward-thinking. They're engaged with the community and community policing aspects. I'm very impressed by them. They are doing right now what are considered best practices in the security field. So they have the SROs here in the high school and the middle school, and if you are going to have them, that's where you want them, in those two buildings. That's where the likelihood is, even though very small. Let me say again, active shooter events are extremely rare. So they are here. They also do other things besides SRO, so they're not here full-time. But they also have, in speaking with the lieutenant, they also have their police officers come to the schools during their shifts. So, might just come take a walk through, sit outside, do a report. That is better for the police department and for you, because active shooters are planners. They do not just snap, they plan for months or years. And if there is an unpredictable presence of police, that thwarts their plans.
One of the things that impressed me in your report is you had several really simple, low-cost solutions we can implement almost immediately that will help. Things like presenting a plan to parents of what to do in the case of an emergency, the parking passes, or I love the one with the classroom numbers inside the room. Could you share some of those with the community, please?
I suggest that there be a parking pass, parking hang tag for staff members. That's just so that you can easily tell which cars belong on your property and which do not. If somebody's out there, they can take a second look at a vehicle and say, well, I don't see a tag on that one. The hang tags I like because most people have more than one car, so if you switch cars, you can just take the tag off and put it back and forth rather than a decal, so you don't have to scratch things off of your car. I also suggested that they put the room numbers inside all of the classrooms. They have them on the outsides, put them on the inside, because if you have a substitute teacher or it's maybe a child trying to make a 911 call or somebody who is just panic-stricken at the event that's going on, they may forget where they are. So you want to put the classroom number in a place where it can be seen even from a lockdown position, so that when the dispatcher says, where are you, you can say, I'm in room 112 of the middle school or whatever that is. So that's a simple suggestion.
I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about what you mentioned about staff and student training.
It goes to school climate. The staff has to feel comfortable that they can report concerning behaviors and that something will be done without retaliation. The students also have to be comfortable that they can go to any staff member and relay their concerns and that something will be done. That just comes from training and from positive reinforcement of when those things happen. The kids say this all the time, that they always want to be able to tell somebody. The active shooters, so nobody listens to them. We focus a lot on the active shooter end of that, the people that would do violence. You also need to be trained in recognizing victims, because sometimes victims turn into actors. If you can get those people that are comfortable, the people that feel like they're being victimized, recognize that, because they might not tell you. So the training will tell that. Now, teachers do every 2 years suicide training. Is that correct? I predict in the future that that's going to be mandated to be more frequently and more robust than it is currently, because they're seeing so much of the suicidal ideations with people that are homicidal. And this is where that starts. This district is very well attuned to that. There are many guidance counselors, there are many psychologists here that specifically reach out to the children for that. There are groups and programs, and there are contracted people that come here for mental health issues, and I think that is where you want to concentrate your efforts.
So we've been talking about like kind of the district generally. I'm assuming that there's different security concerns at a high school as compared to a middle school, as compared to an elementary school. So can you talk a little bit about, what those different aspects of security might be at the high school, for example, versus an elementary school? And then the second part of the question is the priorities that you mentioned to Ms. McEwen, would those priorities be the same at the elementary school level as, or the
Yeah, the
kind of
priorities that I
district-wide?
gave you are district-wide.
Okay.
I did do site-specific recommendations that I don't want to discuss here
Right.
in the open forum. I think in general that because there is much more adult supervision in the lower grades, that that makes it that much safer. Here, it's a large expanse, it's a big building. The kids are left to their own devices because they're teenagers and are growing up. The smaller crew has always got somebody with them. There's a lot of adult supervision, so I think that they're probably more safe than the higher up grades are. Just because you have to strike that balance between being a secure facility and being prison-like. You want to have an open, welcoming atmosphere for your students. That's how they learn best. But you also have to keep them safe in the interim. And again, schools are very safe.
Hi. I was wondering if you could speak to a little bit more about communication. And when we met earlier, you talked a lot about even the parents' role. And our natural inclination is to rush the school, text your kid right away when there's an emergency of any kind, let alone a shooter.
As parents and guardians, you have a responsibility in the emergency response too. Don't be afraid to tell them if somebody's behavior gives you pause. Report that to somebody so they can look into it. That's the first step, whether it's to the school or whether it's to the police department. Let somebody know that there is a possible threat out there. Also, you don't want to, if there's an emergency, what are parents to do? Well, don't come to the school. You're going to get in the way of the police department and the fire department who are trying to do their job. You may become a victim yourself. Don't call the school because they can't answer the phone. You may crash the system. In Virginia Tech, so many people tried to call and text on their cell phones that they crashed the communication system. Now, some places have a place where they can shut down the cell towers. I don't know whether they have that here or not. And I wouldn't tell you if they did anyway. But as parents, don't text your child or call them when there is an emergency going on. You will, one, give away their position if they're hiding, and two, you're taking away their attention from what they need to be doing to make themselves safe because they're busy with their face in a screen. The third thing that I have heard recently from the Parkland shooting is that there was many children in a small space, a small closet, and they were all using their phones. One of them called his father, who was a police officer, who said, turn the phone off. And one of the issues was that it generated so much heat in that small area that they started to get sick. The kids started to get sick. So then they can't respond well. So you have to resist that urge. I know you will be frantic. I would be frantic too. But go to the location that you are directed to go to through the global communication, bring your ID with you, and pick up your child there. They will get the child to you as fast as they can.
Hi, so overall, after we heard, all your report and even your suggestions, we are well positioned.
Yes.
To do all the stuff that you're telling us to do, and increasing the safety of the schools.
Right, you have the building blocks in place. There's just a couple tweaks here and there for enhancing some programs and creating some more target hardening things when you can do that. But I think you're well positioned here. You have a good relationship with your police department, so I think that you are in good shape here. And you have the superintendent of the year.
Okay, at this point, we're going to have the public comment about the presentation. I'm going to ask that if anyone starts to get into too much detail, that anyone, Ms. Devlin or Mr. Crute or anyone thinks, or Mr. McCarry thinks it shouldn't be discussed in public, we'll try to kind of signal you. Obviously, we want you to be able to ask your questions, so we'll just try to work it that way, that you pretty much can ask what you think is, a reasonable question to ask in public. If we think there's, a problem with any particular information. Yeah.
Yeah, just one comment. I went through one of these presentations recently at another district, and one thing I'd like to suggest up front, because once the cat's out of the bag on certain things, it's already out there, and our meetings are recorded, and we just want to try to be careful. If you have questions or concerns about what you perceive to be particular specific vulnerabilities in the school, then it's best not to announce those in public, because then you're just calling attention to them and making those public. We'd ask that with those types of items that you email the administration or the board and raise those concerns. Of course, point them out, but those are the types of things that we don't like to have discussed in public. I was at a meeting where someone got up and said very specifically, door X at school Y is always open between certain times of the day, and that, that's just, we just want to be careful. That's obviously counterproductive. So that's just one caution I'd like to add.
So how the public comment's going to work is we're going to let everyone come up and say what they want to say. We're not going to respond, or nobody's going to respond until after all of the public comments. At that point, Ms. Devlin and Mr. Markarian will attempt to answer any specific questions about our district or about her presentation. So don't expect that we're going to respond immediately to your comments. We're going to let everyone have their public comment first. Okay? So at this point, I'm opening public comment. Don't forget to tell us your name and address when you come up. Thank you.
James Vopel, 20 Evergreen Place. Just want to thank Ms. Devlin for a very thorough report. I'm a public school teacher in another district, and a lot of the things that you feel work here is what we're doing in our district. So I really appreciate you confirming everything that I go through on a daily basis and things that we do in our district. I also want to commend the Board of Education for allowing Ms. Devlin to come in and give us this report. I think it was very thorough, and I'm very pleased to hear that she feels that the schools are safe. I was wondering if you could speak to the effect that social media plays in school safety. I know that a lot of things go around in social media. We all know that parents and students talk about protocols and school safety issues. Can you speak to how that is detrimental to school safety and keeping our kids safe? Thank you.
Hi, Michelle Robertson, 20 Kinnan Way, Basking Ridge. I just wanted to know if Ms. Devlin's assessment included her witnessing an active shooter drill. Although it's great to talk about preparedness, unless you're witnessing it, it's hard to identify gaps. So that's what I'd like to know. Thank you.
Hi, Alicia Seberg, 5 Lindbergh Lane. I have 2 questions. One is, what initiatives, since part of the report, including a lot of the school climate and culture, I wanted to know what initiatives each school is currently practicing, and if there aren't, what type of initiatives the district is looking for each building to have moving forward to ensure that we have a positive climate and culture in each of our buildings. And secondly, in the event that there is some sort of tragic event in one of our buildings, does the district already have reunification sites for each of the building? And if we were to have that, how will that communication be sent to parents? So if we have to come and pick up our children and we're not able to go to the site where our children go to, we know where the reunification center will be for each of the schools. Thank you.
Sherry Nelson, Smoke Rise Road. When it comes to school safety, our district needs to work on improving both the emotional support for our students as well as the security of our buildings. There is room in our budget, more room in our budget than we had a few years ago. Over the last 5 years, enrollment has steadily declined while the school budget has increased by $8.9 million. We have more money in our budget and 350 fewer students to educate. We absolutely need to hire more counselors. We should do everything that we can to identify students that are in danger, that are a danger to themselves or others, and help them access the care that they need. We do have a mental health crisis in our country, but there are limits to what the school district can do to address this crisis. The school district has an obligation to educate our children in a safe environment, and parents have a responsibility to ensure that their children are receiving the treatment. With all due respect to Ms. Devlin, I think it's irresponsible for a security expert to claim that maybe the shooters are targeting a school with officers. Does she have any research to back this up? I've been researching this for weeks. I've found that since Columbine, schools without an SRO are actually targeted twice as often as schools that do have armed officers. I think that is a huge impact on the decision whether or not you have armed officers in our schools. Our district currently has 2 school resource officers whose salaries are paid for by the municipal budget. In addition to security, these officers provide valuable counseling and support services for our students. Our school district has safely utilized armed SROs for the past 17 years. Some people have claimed that adding armed officers in our schools will somehow put our children in danger. I wonder if these residents are aware that our SROs have been armed for all of these years without incident. We need more armed officers to protect all of our children equally across all 6 schools. In 2016, the New Jersey School Boards Association endorsed the hiring of Class 3 special law enforcement officers as an affordable alternative to SROs. Class 3 SLEOs are retired police officers who are required to complete the same training as an SRO. There is a significant cost savings when hiring Class 3 SLEOs because they are considered part-time employees, as they would only be working 35 hours per week during the school year. Some residents have stated that armed officers in our schools might cause anxiety for some students. I find this statement especially concerning. I have taught my children that police officers are there to help and not someone to fear. Our district does a wonderful job of teaching students as young as 3 years old about the positive role of our community helpers, including police officers. It is imperative that parents reinforce that lesson at home. That's a lesson that could save their child's life one day. As far as anxiety is concerned, I can speak from personal experience as I have a child who struggles with anxiety. My child is very fortunate to have an SRO at WAMS. She's here tonight, and I just want to thank you, Officer B. He frequently speaks of Officer B. She's a trusted adult that he can go to with any problem he has. She's the first one he seeks out when our family goes to a school or a community event. I personally sleep better at night knowing that he has Officer B looking out for him, not just from a security standpoint, but also a mental health standpoint. It has been a very difficult transition to middle school for my son, and his relationship with Officer B has been crucial in helping him through some really tough days. We should never underestimate the positive impact these officers have on our children's lives every day. When considering their role in saving lives during a school shooting, how do you quantify the number of lives saved by an officer when there are so many variables at each school shooting? On Wednesday in Illinois, the SRO engaged the school shooter immediately. No one was injured. No children died. How do you put a price tag on it? How do you say that's not effective? It could have went so many different ways.
Excuse me, ma'am, you have about 1 minute to go.
Thank you. When it comes to school safety, prevention is key. However, we must support our police department and give them the resources that they need to respond to all emergencies that might arise in our schools. Most people understand that a school shooting is a low probability, high risk scenario. School shootings are rare, but we must be fully prepared to respond if it happens in our town. I trust that our local law enforcement has the knowledge and expertise on how to keep our students safe. They have requested additional armed officers to protect our schools, and we should honor that request. The estimated cost of hiring 6 SLEOs is $250,000. That is less than 0.25% of the total school budget. If it saves just one life, isn't it worth it?
Hi, I'm Lauren Sacco from Kindred Court. On ABC News last week, on Friday, it was reported that more people were killed at school this year than the military, and that the U.S. is averaging 1 school shooting a week. I know that we live in beautiful Basking Ridge, and this is a place that we hope never has to experience this. But Sandy Hook was beautiful. Sandy Hook was an elementary school. It did not have a resource officer, and it had a ton of adult presence, as we heard is great for our elementary schools here, and it still happened. So we don't live in a bubble. It can happen anywhere. So as parents, teachers, friends, and community neighbors, we have to help to deter any school-based crimes in our schools. I believe hiring more counselors or educational psychologists may help the children who wish to share and become vulnerable as they share their thoughts. However, the quiet, shy children may not come forward. And do parents need to provide consent for counseling services? If a child is to be evaluated for being emotionally disturbed, parents need to consent to that testing. And will they? In these instances, more counselors or psychologists may or may not be able to help a child in need. I do support resource officers in our schools. They fill a variety of roles: preventing and responding to school-based crime, fostering positive relationships among law enforcement, educators, and youth, and promoting positive school climate. SROs act as educators, informal counselors, and law enforcement. They fill a variety of roles for us. As educators, they can train and help our staff They can educate students, teach them about criminal investigation, laws and constitutional rights, law enforcement as a career, substance abuse, and they can spend time in the classroom. Police officers, they're community helpers. There was a police officer in my daughter's kindergarten this year. She was so excited when she came home and talked about her community helper. Police officers aren't bad people, and students shouldn't fear them. And we should be able to create an environment where everyone is safe, and they're part of our community. They can also share Halloween safety, fire prevention, work with the firefighters. They can also advise on emergency preparedness and crisis and incident management, promote crime prevention throughout environmental design, and they can work with parents and the community. They can also be informal counselors. They can also work by fostering relationships to intervene before issues escalate as a counselor in the school. They can refer students to appropriate resources, and they can help keep them out of the juvenile system if they have a relationship with them. As law enforcers, they can respond to on-campus calls and emergencies or trespassers, deter on-campus violence or crime, conduct investigations, and they can patrol the property. It would act as an extra security guard or crossing guard. We have a lot of things that the SROs can help us with. Increasing the safety in and around our school. The presence in the morning and the afternoon has been great at the elementary schools, seeing them there. Increased perception of safety. Improved response time. I mean, if you look at some of these awful incidences that happened, there was a 3-minute response time in Texas. By the time they get in their cars, they drive from the police station, they get here, there's a lot more lives that are going to be lost. Reduction in truancy and fewer distractions in teaching situations. We have some young learners who exhibit some difficult behaviors in the elementary schools, and these are students who aren't classified. And I think sometimes the principals and the guidance counselors, sometimes have done all they can. And if we have an officer there, it's one more person who can maybe help or actually make a connection with this kid to maybe change behaviors. And I agree that an unpredictable police presence, which is what we have right now at the elementary schools, is helpful, but I don't think that that's the answer. I think we need a designated police presence at our schools.
Excuse me, ma'am, you have about 1 minute.
Okay, thank you. And I would also like to talk about the items that were discussed for review. Communication systems, you know I'm very strong about the communication system at one school X that is an intercom that I would like to be upgraded. So I'm really hoping that we make that, because the biggest problem I have with the district is that the resources are not consistent at the schools. Cameras at the high school, not at other schools. Phone systems here. You know my position, you know how I feel about that, and I think all students should have the same resources, the same safety issues, and that please make it consistent across the district. Thank you.
Good evening. Excuse me. My name is Joanne Harris. I live at 29 Watchung Drive. I wanted to thank you for having Ms. Devlin do the safety assessment. I know that your hearts are in the right place. I want to also thank Mr. Markarian for proactively attending to mental health issues that are all involved in this issue. I would like to know if, I'm going to address the issue of climate, whether Ms. Devlin is familiar with the Sandy Hook Promise and their programs. That community, as someone mentioned before, suffered a tragic loss, and they've spent the last 6 years, I believe, looking into programs such as Say Something, Start with Hello, SOS, Signs of Suicide, a safety assessment and intervention program to evaluate and resolve threatening behaviors before they escalate into violence. I think that's certainly something that this township could do. Sandy Hook provides this program. I think they've trained over 3.5 million people in our country, and they can provide this program and find ways to fund it if the dollars aren't there. I just wanted to thank you again.
I'm a little shorter than everyone else. My name is Nestor Rossi, and I live at Culberson Road in Basking Ridge. A safe learning environment for our children promotes social and creative learning. It's a basic fundamental necessity. We need to take action against the tragedies occurring in our schools nationwide. We need to take action here in Basking Ridge. These tragedies occur without notice. They are random. We need to have the appropriate level of counseling to meet our children's needs, but we also need a deterrent. An armed officer, whether a Class 3 SLEO or an SRO, provides the necessary countermeasures to confront a threat to our children. Engaging an active shooter reduces the loss of lives. We should not have to choose between improving school security and improving the social emotional learning of our children. The Somerset County Freeholders and the New Jersey School Security Task Force has provided recommendations that the best practice in school safety and security is the utilization of SROs. The Township Committee has employed 2 SROs at William Annan and Basking Ridge High School for over 15 years. I really urge the BOE to strongly consider the recommendation of our law enforcement to hire SLEOs in addition to our 2 existing SROs to reduce the likelihood of having this tragedy occur in our town. Thank you.
Good evening. School hardening is a vital step to ensuring our children are
Can
safe.
you just tell me your name and
Oh,
address?
I'm sorry. Megan Lipset, Linden Drive. School hardening is a vital step to ensuring our children are safe while they learn, but it must be done, as the report mentioned tonight, in conjunction with a diligent commitment to school climate and culture. A healthy school climate means that every school in our district is aligned under a common goal, the most basic of which should be to feel safe in the school from crime, bullying, and assault of any kind. And that every member of the Bernards Township Schools staff is invested in every student's development as a human being. A powerful way to deepen the understanding between student and staff and identify students who are at risk of harming themselves or others is relationship mapping, an idea I have shared with the board before. Furthermore, our district needs to be more proactive in seeking security concerns. To that end, I suggest the BOE members be a part of our district crisis management team and recommend that principals frequently ask their school community to email any concerns. And finally, that the district immediately adopt the free Stop It app so students, staff, and parents can anonymously report not only security concerns, but also connect with counselors in moments of crisis, such as suicidal thoughts. All of these could be implemented immediately with minimal cost and provide a strong feedback loop that will make our schools safer. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dave. Oh, this is short. I'm David Cavill from 41 Crown Court. My first question would be. Oh, I could. Okay, thanks. My back. My first question was actually a question for Ms. Devlin. Maybe she can answer it at a future time. Was during her presentation, I was a little confused by the deterrence of an SRO versus deterrence of a police officer. First, the SRO was not a deterrence, but then if there are police presence following proper recommended security protocols, then she said that it was a deterrent. So I'm a little confused by the deterrence. Is it because one's an SRO and one's a police officer? Because I believe some SROs are either retired or part-time, so I'm just a little confused by that in the presentation. And also, regarding SROs, I have a daughter in elementary school, and I know there's SROs in middle school and high school, and I know that the likelihood of a school shooting, and most common we see in the news, is high school because of bullying, more likelihood of bullying, higher risk. But I believe, and I know there's a lot of adult supervision in elementary schools, but I was just concerned that the youngest, the elementary school kids, are the most vulnerable, especially during a chaotic event like a school shooting. So I'm not exactly sure, of course, about the budget and how much money can be allocated for security. But I think if a decision is made to hire additional SROs or utilize police officers off duty or whatever, that the elementary schools get considered in the budget. And my last item is, I don't know how much I can talk about it, but in terms of the perimeter, I wanted to know if Ms. Devlin thought, I know these buildings weren't designed for the current environment, particularly on the outside with expecting AR-15s and everything else, but I just wanted to know her opinion regarding, I know there's double entry points for most of the schools, but the current structure of the doors, what she thinks the likelihood of somebody enter, how fast, how quickly, based on the current makeup of the doors. And I know it's very expensive to upgrade doors, especially if I know you can limit to single point entry and stuff like that. But the current makeup of the doors and the perimeter, I know is critical in the first line of defense. What her opinion is of our current door structures in all levels of all schools. As you could tell by walking in the high school, you can see what the doors are made of. So I'll keep it general, but that was my three items. Thanks.
Hi, Shivam, 19 Lindbergh Lane. So for the past 30 minutes, we were talking about mental health and how that affects students on the daily. And I am someone who does deal with mental health issues. And one thing that I've noticed is that the school is understaffed in people that can help with mental health issues. And my question for you is, what resources are going to be provided in the future, and how will you be able to tell when to stop providing them? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mike Vina from Roberts Circle and Connecticut Avenue, Northwest Washington, D.C. I spent 25 years in law enforcement, retired for 6 years, and came out of retirement, and now I'm a sergeant at American University in Washington. I subbed here in Basking Ridge. During my retirement, I was Max's sub for security. I know the shortcomings that are here. Not a whole lot, but there are a few. Armed law enforcement is not the answer in your schools. You need to get more counselors to identify these children, 'cause that's what they are, before they do something bad. If you think the cost is going to be $250,000, it's going to be a lot more than that. If you ask Max if he would have taken the job for what you're paying him, if he had to carry a firearm, he wouldn't have taken the job. You're not going to get retired cops for $30 an hour to carry a gun. Not here. Maybe down in Cumberland County, South Jersey, but not up here. 6 officers is not enough for the district. It might not be enough just for the high school. Too many entry points. We need as counselors and you had mentioned you want the officer to be a trainer, a counselor, a guard the door, watch the monitors. One guy, 35 hours a week, not enough. It's not the answer.
Good evening. Stella Parana, 105 Tuxford Terrace. I appreciate everyone coming this evening and expressing their concerns. Having been a victim of crime in this town, I can tell you from firsthand experience, it's an awful feeling. After that, I tell you what, I became so much more aware of what was missing. And every day I look at my home and I say, what can I do to protect my family? We should be looking at our schools as our home. Those are our treasures in our schools every day. One of the things the detective, who I will always be grateful for, Detective Berger, he had said, make your house look occupied. We need to make our schools look occupied. What that means is that anyone who has a desire to harm our children understands that they are coming up against a hard rock, that there is no entry point. Having done some recent college visits, some of the things I saw down in the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area, especially at Johns Hopkins, any of the dorms, they had set up these really attractive they were like guard gates, but it was like a guardhouse and turnstiles. And the student would need their ID to be able to activate the turnstile. But that wasn't enough. Once you got to the building, those cards were matched to the building that the students lived in. I took pictures. I haven't sent them to the board, but I will. But I just felt, okay, this is somewhere I could send my child. I'd like to see something like that here. Maybe not in the grandiose fashion, but we need single entry point, smart approaches to keeping our kids safe. What we don't think about, and this is something I dealt with when I worked in New York City, I had an employee who had a husband, an ex-husband, who was very angry and was threatening to come to our office to shoot her. The fear that struck my employees, knowing that an armed person would be coming to the office, made us change our security policy overnight. That door was locked. We had keyholes. Everyone had to be announced. I think one of the things we should be doing is have pre-approved visitors. Don't think people should just come unannounced. You're on a pre-approved list. If you're not on the list, you have to make a call and you have to be vouched. I think those are simple measures that need to be considered. And I apologize, I came a little late, so I didn't hear if we had considered metal detectors, but I think that's an easy and worthwhile measure to consider. And having an SRO, I have to tell you, it makes me feel comfortable seeing a police car outside of the high school and the middle school. Now, I don't have children in the elementary school, but if I did, I would feel more comfortable seeing them there. I was listening to a radio station this morning, and there was a gentleman that had called in, and he had said, we shouldn't have unmarked cars in the parking lot, we should have marked cars, that the sense of a presence of police in the school would deter anyone who would do harm to our students. That's it. Thank you.
Bobby Massia, 75 North Maple Ave. My wife's a guidance counselor, not in this district. And I've spoken to a couple of people in multiple districts, and it's definitely a mixed bag in terms of the armed guards in the schools and how the teachers themselves and the guidance counselors themselves feel. But one of the things that has been pretty overwhelming, and I haven't really spoken to anybody in this district yet to the extent that I've spoken to other people, but more and more their time is taken away from the students and having to help them to get into college and prepare themselves, and time is being spent on an overwhelming amount of mental illness issues. And I just want to second a lot of the, and third and fourth, a lot of the voices out there in the sense of we need more counselors to help address these issues before they turn into large dramatic events. And I think that needs to be very much a focus.
Hi, I'm Pallavi Mehta, 45 Hamilton Road. I have two questions, comments. I heard a couple of different opinions about having armed resource officers in school. Is there any plan to raise the same question amongst the teachers and the principals and all of the staff members at every school and survey what do they feel about that? The second question is, or the comment is about the school environment and the climate. I do believe that the safety starts at home, and we definitely need to focus more on making sure that our school culture and the climate is a conducive environment for kids learning, and we have the opportunity to identify a victim or victim in the making. And most of the incidents that have happened in this country in past several months, years, there were some indications that this person is going to do some harm at some day. As we just heard that most of these active shooters are always prepared. They are preparing things for months in advance. Is there any way that parents, neighbors, teachers, friends could have identified where and how these active shooters got hold of so many things that they could just create havoc in our communities? Is there any plan that we can potentially help parents, neighbors, friends identify this kind of troubled behaviors or the planning in making? Thank you.
Hello, Suzanne Skalski, 25 Dawn Drive. I just wanted to thank you for doing the security evaluation, and I urge you to listen to the recommendations. I think some of those things are easy to implement and won't cost a lot. Some of the things are going to be very expensive. And I really appreciate the idea that if this is based around school culture, that we can do something with that. I've been an advocate for saying we need more counselors and some ideas about that. But I also want to remind the board of the impassioned pleas from the students from 2 weeks ago, who were incredibly thoughtful and well-spoken and were really advocating for more counselors, more guidance, more student mental health, and they were adamant against extra armed guards in the schools. And I think, again, to the previous speaker, we should be asking our students what they want. This was not the result of Parkland. They did not come out saying we want more armed guards. So I think it is a good idea to maybe ask the students and the staff and maybe even the community. It's not necessarily that we all represent exactly what is going on. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Amy Melick from Hayes Road in Basking Ridge. I've lived in this township for 49 years. My mother was a teacher at William Annan. My husband is a graduate, 1980, of Ridge High School, and we live on the street that my husband grew up on and are raising our children there. I'm telling you this because I want to make sure you understand I have deep roots here and I'm committed to the well-being of all the residents in the community, especially our children. I want the Board of Education to understand that we need our voices to be heard regarding all of these options that are being discussed around the safety of our students. I don't think that hiring more armed officers is the answer. I want to reiterate that we need more discussion about what the answers are. I'm sharing some information with you. I spoke 2 weeks ago. I wrote a letter to the Burnsville News outlining the need for more counselors and more mental health care. May is Mental Health Care Month. The National Association for Suicide Prevention is working on that this month and shared some research. 1 in 5 teens consider suicide, and school leaders are starting to recognize that they have a life-saving role to play. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for teenagers. 1 in 5 students answers yes to the question, in the past 12 months, did you ever seriously consider suicide? It was mentioned about suicide ideation by the DevTech representative. It's an important indicator of someone who might seriously be depressed, anxious, stressed, or who may actually attempt suicide. And finally, I think it's really important that we deal with the crisis that's in front of us, and our children need us to stand up for them. And I hope no one has to do what I had to do and tell my child that his best friend shot herself in the head and killed herself. And some of the things that were said to us were, she's in a better place because the police had to go to her house. I'm not sure that that's the answer. And as the mother who stood with her son at the funeral service of his best friend while he clutched the letter that she wrote to say goodbye, and as the mother who stood with my son in a cemetery while they lowered her 16-year-old body in a casket into the grave, and I held my son while he fell apart, I hope that no other parent in this town ever has to have that experience, either as the mother of the child who takes their own life, or as the mother of the child who has to live with that for the rest of our lives. The warning signs are there. We have to do more around mental awareness. We have to help these kids deal with their stress and their anxiety and the pressure This woman has said our school systems are safe. Are there things we can do better? Absolutely. But we should focus on the crisis at hand, and that is our children who need our help, and they're asking for help from adults. That's it. Thank you.
Hi, Chitra Fadke, 47 Hartley Lane. I want to talk a few points about the security resource officers that we are planning to hire or thinking of for the school system. We have seen the reports in Parkland and the behavior or the actions of the security resource officer over there. I mean, we are not here to judge his actions, but we all know what happened there. So security resource officers is not the only solution to this problem of security in the thing. And we have to consider other things. Some of the speakers before me have talked about counselors, which I think I agree, or a hotline where members of the community can actually call in and report or anonymously or otherwise things that they have seen or actions of the kids that they want to report of. I think that needs to be happening. Other thing is the entry to the school. I'm not sure how secure the entries are to the school, especially the high school with so many multiple entries. Having a badge system where only either badged students or staff can enter would make it more secure. But one of the third thing I want to talk of is actually the lockdown drills. I know my kids go through lockdown drills and practice and stuff. And I'm sure the rest of the country, the schools over there also have that. Yet, in none of the reports that I've seen, either in Parkland or in Texas or anywhere, did I read anywhere that a lockdown drill was initiated. There was a big delay between when the shooter started his shooting and when he was actually apprehended or caught or whatever. So during this delay, I think this delay is too much. There could have been a lockdown drill initiated. Why did it not happen? Is the process of initiating a lockdown drill that complicated? So we need to review that process. It should be as simple as pressing some big red button in the classroom which initiates a lockdown drill on a PA system. That is not going to deter the shooter, but I think it will certainly save many more lives. So I would like to ask the board and everybody to seriously consider some of these procedures and see if there can be something that can be done in that regard. Thank you.
Cho Shear, Tall Timber Lane. I'm not here as a Democrat, a Republican, an independent, pro-gun, anti-gun. I'm here as a parent of a child in this district. In 2018, there have been 7 school shootings in 5 months, the last one occurring 3 days ago. This resulted in deaths and injuries to parents, adults, and children. I know that one of our speakers spoke about a suicide and her son never wanting to have to experience that. I never want to have to experience what these parents in Texas, Florida, and other places have experienced. So, contrary to what your consultant said, where she doesn't believe that an SRO makes a difference, I think you need to say that to the parents in Dixon, Illinois, where an SRO did make a difference. While I appreciate the importance of prevention as it relates to programs in mental health, I'm also realistic to recognize that as hard as we try, the system will not catch everyone. It will not fix everyone. And therefore, we have to be prepared. And I think this is a multi-dimensional issue. It's not just about having officers, it's also about the prevention. So I'm asking the district to consider it in multiple ways. One, prevention and mental wellness programs. I think we've heard a lot here about counselors. I know I personally have reached out to your counseling staff about what can we as parents do. And so I say to the district, use us. If you've got willing, active parents that want to help, my daughter has actually offered to help and has spoken to other kids in the district. I think this needs to be a grassroots movement as well. And so you guys are the experts. Tell us what we should do. I've reached out. Many others have reached out in the district. So it's not just about the counseling. It's about the grassroots as well. And we're looking for guidance from the district on that. I think you need to train your teachers. So I've heard of programs that are being looked at and evaluate over the summer for your teachers. I think that's fabulous, and I think you should make that a priority. Prevention also includes an alert system. So we've heard from students at the last board meeting, we've heard from parents today. You know, it's sometimes not easy to go to a teacher. So is there a way, is there an anonymous system that can be put in place? I think there's been several mentioned, the Stop It app, but we need to put something in play. In addition, you need to harden the schools. So I know it's been mentioned, but I just want to reiterate, metal detectors. I don't think that was mentioned by the security audit. Was that brought up, and what would that do? To me, that seems like a relatively inexpensive tool to put in place. But then finally, you get to the point of you've done all this prevention, you've tried to identify the students, but what happens if a shooting occurs? Thank you. Then what are you going to do? What's going to happen? Are we going to give our kids rocks to throw at? Are you going to have a resource there that is going to protect and know what needs to be done? It's hard to understand how someone can oppose actions that will secure the safety of our children. I'm asking for a basic setup in our schools that will keep out intruders, that will have training for our teachers, that will identify and work with troubled teens. I'm asking for programs that will allow people to identify issues. I'm asking for the Bernards Township to be a leader in school security. I'm asking for the township district to maintain the excellence that it's known for and why I am in this town. School security is a basic need for our students. It's not a nice to have. Thank you.
Hello. Good evening. I'm Annika Kopczynski. I live on Tall Timber Lane. So thank you for hosting this meeting. Thank you for the person who evaluated our safety. But I'd like to express myself tonight as I did a week ago. Since the last meeting, I've spoken with some of my friends, and we have discussed this idea of putting an armed SRO in our school, and many of them have had the same reaction. What? There's no way our school will put more guns into this place. I am here today to voice their opinions, since many of them could not be here for academic reasons. I stand by my statement 10 days ago. All the students that I have spoken with do not want more guns in our school. There are more threats to teenagers in William-Annan and at Ridge, such as mental health issues and drug abuse. Rather than spending your money on SROs, please consider spending it on mental health support, suicide prevention, and drug prevention. Please, can we create a better environment for our students that feel safe to go to their guidance counselors, where they don't feel alienated? That is how you prevent suicides. That is how you prevent school shootings. You hit it by the cause. Please let our students feel safe. Let's be proactive and preventative rather than reactive. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Shayla Safi from Pheasant Run Drive. Sorry, I didn't actually plan on speaking, but I've been listening, and one of the things that I think should be reiterated, as I heard someone say earlier, relationship mapping. I know I'm a graduating senior, I've been in the school for 4 years, I've been in the district for 8 years. I know that there are resources available to me for any mental health issues. I know that we have our SACs and we have our guidance department, but they're not accessible. We have guidance department, and I was actually looking for it 5 minutes ago on my phone. If you go into the guidance department page, the first thing you see is AP testing information. The second thing you see is college application information. There's nothing readily available for mental health. I remember vaguely from assemblies that we have SACs. To be honest, I don't remember what the acronym stands for. It doesn't stick in your mind, because as a student, if you have a test and an essay and practice after school and clubs in the morning, and you're feeling overwhelmed and anything else that could be going on mentally, assuming that you are neurotypical, if you're not, it's even worse with anxiety and depression and all the other issues that plague us as students. The first thing that runs through your mind is not going to be, I'm going to send an email to my guidance counselor, because you want to focus on all the things that you have to accomplish, and you don't want to make a bigger problem out of something that's already there. I don't focus, when I do feel overwhelmed, I don't seek out things. There needs to be someone readily available to me that will understand and be taking a step forward when I'm feeling crushed or anything. I know that we have Officer Neiman, and I've seen him around the school, and I say hi to him. I appreciate his presence. It's not more officers that we need, it's more outreach to students. It shouldn't be, oh, these resources are available, take them when you need them. There should be someone taking a step forward and making themselves present to students. So just final statement, I'd like to reiterate that relationship mapping is more of a solution than I could see putting more guns into our school.
Is there anyone else for public comment on security?
Somebody's there. Okay. Oh, she was just signing, sorry. But now they're pulling.
Elaine D'Addario, 46 Dykeman Place. I wasn't prepared to speak either, but I figured why not. We're talking about security and SROs and the climate of mental health. We're talking about adding counselors. I just feel like the problem, we're dealing with it in reverse. I think we need all those things, but they're not all possible. Why are the children so broken and brittle and anxiety-ridden? You know, why are we having so many suicides in this town? We really need to fix the problem. I mean, we all know there's a problem. There's a problem in the climate. More counselors are needed. What are we doing about the problem? Not patching, you know, and getting by. Because I'll tell you something, the climate is horrible. I think we all recognize that. But what are we doing to fix it? I don't have confidence it'll be fixed by the time my child's out of this district. And some people talking tonight don't even have kids in the district. But the climate is the problem. Security has to be addressed. But we all know these kids, I mean, going into middle school, the drugs, the mental health, the girl just got back from being away from that. What are we doing to really look at these kids and see what's aching them before we need to have them go to counselors in high school? What is it? Is it the academic pressure? I think that's a big part of it. Maybe we need to look at that. I'm not done. You know, we look at the senior class accomplishments, what colleges they get into, all the accolades. We've pushed them that far. Aren't we happy we got them into colleges? But we never look at what happens to them after that. I can tell you a lot of them are not doing that great. I'd love to see a survey on that, what happens life after Ridge. It's not really pretty. Let's do a survey on that. I want to see what happens after, because we pat ourselves on the backs all the time about what we accomplished here and what list we're on. Look into what happens after. There's a bigger problem here. Security is important, mental health for sure, but what is causing the mental health that we need all this security? Not only here in Basking Ridge, but in this country. There is a climate problem. Please don't just look at the patch. Look at fixing the problem. Okay? Thank you for your time.
Is there anyone else for public comment or questions? No. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to close this first public comment. Mr. Markarian, what do you think the best way? I know Ms. Devlin's down there. Let her take the ones she wants to take? Okay.
Why don't you go first, Kathy, see what you can handle, and then we'll try to go through the rest up here. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Grab that.
The other mic. It says,
I think it's up now.
okay? Okay. Thank you for all of your comments. I appreciate that. Let me be clear about one thing. I love police officers. I used to be one. My husband used to be one. I did not say that they are not effective. I said that I don't think that you need any more here than you have. In answer to your question, a full-time SRO that's here on a schedule is different than what we were talking about with best practices with them coming periodically and unpredictable times. So there was a difference in those two things. Does that answer your question? Okay. Social media, I have spoken to the IT director about that. There will be things in place for that. That again goes to her comment back there, that those things start at home as well, monitoring your child's social media and being a parent and being responsible about what you put on the internet or on a Facebook chat or whatever that happens to be that's not responsible, or that you don't have all of the information, because then that just increases people's anxiety. They do have some things in place here for identifying things ahead of time. Most places call it a threat assessment and management process. Here it's under the violence prevention policy. And I've made some suggestions about changing that and tweaking that and putting more training in. The access control things, I can't speak to the specifics of that, but we are trying to make some improvements to that. There does have to be limited access. Who else did I miss here? I prefaced my statement about maybe active shooters are purposely seeking out places with police officers with. That was my opinion that I was discussing with somebody this weekend. That maybe it's just a hypothesis. I hear all of these numbers with there's been 200 shootings since Columbine, there's been 800 shootings since Columbine. It depends on how you count them and what your definition of that is. Northwestern University just did a study that since Sandy Hook there have been 10 active shooters. 0.009% chance of that happening. Because they are using the strict definition of active shooter. Were there other shootings? Yes. Somebody mentioned something about a domestic situation. One of my suggestions was to expand their threat assessment into a workplace violence policy, because while the children may be a threat, so can staff members or people outside the community, and you need to look at all of those things. So to expand that, and again, the law enforcement presence comes into that, where they share information back and forth. One of the issues is everybody is limited in the information that they can share. Last month, I testified at a legislative committee hearing on education about school security. And I think that it's a matter of short time where you will see it mandated that children are going to have to undergo mental health screenings, regardless of whether their parents give permission or not. It's one of the things that we talked about. It takes a village sometimes, but if you don't let the villagers talk to one another, you get information silos, and now the information is not crossing. So I think you will see that very soon. I did not witness an active shooter drill, but I spoke to the SROs here who teach that, and they are right on point with what they are teaching, very sharp. So I think that they are well positioned again for that. Somebody's talking about the panic buttons and things. There are pros and cons to that. Yes, you can just push a button and alert people, and yes, a kid can just push the button every time he walks past it. So you have to weigh those issues. You also have to be careful with some of the visual and audio devices, because some people with special needs, that triggers reactions or seizures and things like that. So you have to take that into consideration as well. What else did I miss there?
Well, you talked about school climate before.
Yes, with the threat assessment is really what they are pushing currently, threat assessment and management. Homeland Security, Secret Service, the FBI have for the past 20 years told schools they should be doing this, and now it's just more coming into the folds now. The state of Virginia mandates it, and they have a process for that. And you can get additional training on that. Like I said, you do have the building blocks that for here, it just needs to be expanded upon. You do have a lot of mental health counselors here, and I agree with all of you that that should be increased. That is one of the root causes of this. Nothing is 100% foolproof. I don't want you to have a false sense of security that nothing will ever happen here, nothing bad will ever happen here. No matter what you do, something bad may happen. We have to teach our children more coping mechanisms, not just in Basking Ridge, everywhere, right? Everybody gets a participation trophy, so nobody knows how to lose, right? There's no resilience with our children, and we need to teach them that. And that's where all of those programs come in. As far as anonymous reporting goes, that is an option. I like text messaging, particularly for the students who can text something to someone. Put posters up where they can, the numbers they can call, the people that they can go to. Have somebody, we talked about recognizing victims. We spoke about that. Anonymous reporting, you have to understand, though, is limited because people won't give you enough information sometimes to act on. And then if you don't know the source, you can't go ask them follow-up questions. The other thing is when they are doing any kind of an assessment, if you are the one that's making a report, you have to have confidence that something's going to be done, but that doesn't mean they're going to tell you what was done. There are confidentiality issues. So you have to trust that they are working on this and that they have a plan. And you have to monitor people even after they are out of this particular situation. Two of these shooters were former students. So you can't expel the problem away either. You have to continue to monitor them until the threat has passed, or as best that you can determine that the threat has passed. So what else? Anybody else? And I did, where's the students? Are they still here? I did recommend that a student representative be on a security council to put forth your ideas and your suggestions about security, because I think that you are certainly capable of doing that. Metal detectors. Metal detectors, the problem with metal detectors, one is that now they make guns on 3D printers out of plastic, would be one problem. The other is what's called throughput. For the kids in the morning to come through metal detectors would take forever, because it's not just a matter of walking through the metal detectors, it's then checking things afterwards, going through bags, things like that. And that would, arrival in this time would go from 15 minutes to an hour with this many kids here. So that's difficult. Anything else? You don't get a turn?
Yeah, you can jump back in when Mr. McCarrian's talking if you think of something, or if he says something and you want to correct him.
Yeah, no, I thought you hit most of the things that sounded like your expertise would match it well. Some of the other things that I heard, I know we had talked a few months ago with respect to social media and the things that are out there, and everybody trying to be sensitive to conversations that might make suggestions of vulnerabilities, which we've kind of talked about again a little bit tonight with regard to our public meeting. One of the questions was about what's going on with climate and culture and mental health. I know that each of the principals provided some information about what they were doing with their climate and culture surveys. That was done earlier this year. I believe it was February 12th in the mental health presentation. So each school is working on theirs, and there's some information still posted in that presentation on our website if you want to go back and take a look at that. And that work is going to be ongoing. We did implement the Signs of Suicide program. I have gotten a little bit of information about the Sandy Hook Promise, and we are taking a look at that. We did the student climate surveys last year, and this spring we're gearing up right now to do student stressor surveys, working in conjunction with the health department. We've taken a look at the anonymous reporting system, Stop It, with a webinar, and there's another similar project that we're trying to get lined up with our district safety team to do another webinar to look at their product. Provides a similar service, so we're kind of comparing to look to see what we might like to try to do with that. The building envelope, I think there was some suggestions about our entrances and the age of the building. We are looking to continue to invest, as we've talked about in our budget presentations, not only on the security cameras, but also the way visitors are processed at the entrance here at Ridge, and the use of 3M security film on glass. There was a lot of discussion with regard to mental illness, mental supports, counselors, SROs, SLEOs, where to invest energy, and also source and root cause. To some extent, I think the implication there was, are we sometimes in a reactive mode, even with some of the things that counselors are doing? Thought that was an interesting concept and probably true to some extent. And I think that all of these things that we're talking about kind of goes back to what I talked about at the last meeting, which is a balanced approach. We have to do what we can in all of these areas with the resources that we have. And just to echo the sentiments of Ms. Devlin when she talked about, she loves police officers. She was a police officer. You know, I don't want anything to be taken away from our police department. We have a great police department. Kathy observed it when she came here. I've never had a bad experience, and I've reached out to them a lot. Our SROs are tremendous. They do a lot of things in our schools, whether it's, working in DARE, talking to kids. It's not just about having a sidearm to help respond to an active shooter. They go way above and beyond with respect to their duties here. And I know I see Tracy back there. I don't see John here, and I think I would notice him because he's hard to miss. But, I appreciate Tracy being here and listening, and these are people that work really hard for us, and I don't want to take anything away from them, and I hope that nobody sitting here, including Tracy, feels like that any of that is a thought whatsoever, because you guys are greatly appreciated. So I guess I think that we have currently taken a balanced approach. I think we've invested in school resource officer. We have that relationship with the town. We've invested in 7 school psychologists in our district. We have 4 student assistance counselors. In last year's budget for the current year, 17-18, we added a student assistance counselor. We added 2 mental health professionals working here at Ridge High School. These are not things that come at any small expense. I'm sure you know that having full-time professionals, salaries and benefits is not a small expense. We're trying to balance all of the resources that we have, and I think we have a good balance going. I think Kathy shared that